My name is Gary Gomes. I'm coming to you in a slightly different format this week. Something we're trying for an experiment and see how you like it, or if you don't like it, let me know. Essentially, the first thing I'd like to talk about is the fact that I'd like to mention the store that I'm affiliated with. My wife and I own a store in New Bedford, Crystal Expectations. It's been in business since 1988. We're one of the oldest New Age stores in the state, if not in New England, if not in the country. So we've been here quite a while, and we're here to help you out in whatever you need. So that was the end of the shameless plug, and I'll also go along to say that it's essentially we pretty much can find whatever you need. But getting back to the topic of astrology, and that's a major point of these sessions, is to talk about astrology and what it means to you, and especially Vedic astrology, because it's such a wonderful and deep tradition of astrology. We have people who follow this channel all over the world. We're trying to build a membership, so please. As you go to Greater New Bedford Cable TV, if you watch me there, or if you watch me on YouTube, if you like the content of the videos, please let me know, and hit the bell and share it. And if you don't like the content of the videos and you'd rather something more, something different, just let me know that as well. I'm happy to please you. I'm happy to provide whatever. I have nearly 30 years experience in Vedic astrology. I'm a meditation teacher, I'm a Reiki teacher, Reiki master. So I think I have a lot to offer folks. But again, like I said, it's not a plug, it's just an awareness. So essentially what we're trying to do is bring as much good information to people. Maybe in the future I'll be setting up a music channel, as I said before, and we'll be talking a lot about music, not only the critical side of it, but also the technical side of it, and helping musicians out. So, and maybe if Greater New Bedford Cable lets me, I'll play, and I'll invite people on to play on Greater New Bedford Cable, and won't that be interesting? All right, so to get back to the chart, and to get back to the analysis, the one thing I'd encourage you to do, I'm seeing a lot of negative predictions on Facebook, on a variety of different channels. It's really not that horrible a time to be around. I've seen many worse charts. The late 1970s was just a horrible time, around the mid-1970s. The early 1980s was just really bad. The late 2008 to 2012 were just really horrible times. This is nowhere near that kind of a scale in terms of difficulty, in terms of drama in the chart. The reason we're feeling it so dramatically is because the United States itself is in what's called Rahu Mahadasha. And Rahu is connected with panic, with fear, with anxiety. We're seeing a lot of shifting around the world. Saturn's been, so the signs have various characteristics, and those of you who are familiar with astrology know this already, but for those of you who aren't familiar with astrology, bear with me for a few minutes while I give a slightly technical explanation. We have a lot of planets in what are called mutable signs in Western astrology. They're called Drishabha signs in Vedic astrology. It means essentially they're mutable, they're changeable, they're variable. They have 1 foot here and 1 foot here. So they're changing qualities, they're changing elements. So we have planets right now, as I'm speaking, is October 15th. We have planets in Virgo, Mars and Sun is just about to leave Virgo. We have planets in Sagittarius, which is connected with higher wisdom, knowledge, governmental structure, belief in truth, those kinds of things. We have Rahu based in Gemini, and is in what's called a nakshatra, which is connected with storminess and outrage and just out and out fear. So essentially, although it's a very good transformative nakshatra, and one of the things I'm going to insist that people take away from astrology is no matter how fearful a prediction you get, no matter how fearful a situation you feel you're in, there's always something that comes after. There's always something positive that comes out of that. Everything is always in the process of transforming and evolving. Nothing is ever stagnant, nothing is ever horrible, nothing is ever irredeemable beyond measure. And I want to drive that home to people, because people tend to be really, I won't say they're too defeatist, but they tend to be, if it's written in the stars, what can I do about it? Well, there's a lot you can do about it. You were born into this world because you wanted to be born into this world, okay? It isn't because you were sent here for some horrible punishment. Some people may have a debt to pay. That's certainly possible. Other people may have benefits to garner, and they want to experience those things before they escape from liberation. But with that combination of planets, right now, everybody feels a little bit uneasy. And in Indian astrology, I prefer to deal with a limited number of planets. I really prefer not to deal with Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune, although I do believe they have an effect, but they're not an effect that can't be explained by the other planets. Let me just clarify that for a second. Jupiter right now is right at the end of Scorpio in Vedic astrology. It's right at the end of Vrishika, which is a deep and intense sign. It's in Jyeshtha nakshatra. Jyeshtha is the oldest nakshatra. It's the most worried nakshatra. It knows the most. It's very Plutonian. Okay, so Jupiter's going to bring all that Pluto energy in. Ketu's with Saturn. Ketu is going to cause a lot of confusion. It'll take up for what Uranus is doing right now in terms of government heads and leaderships and disruptions in governments. And Rahu is very Uranian as well. Okay, so you have a lot of unusual people coming around, and a lot of chaos in the press. So the last time we had this Rahu in Gemini was in 2001, roughly. So this was around the same time as the very real attack on New York, but Rahu didn't cause that. Okay, it was a combination of planets all configuring. And when you get a bunch of astrologers come in and say, well, we're going to have a catastrophe, or we're going to have a world war, or we're going to have an economic depression, is based upon, now these are legitimate people. These are on people who are stupid. They've studied astrology, they've studied the history, but they're overlooking certain factors, like Jupiter's going into Sagittarius. It's really not going to conjoin with Saturn as it has in other conjunctions. Ketu and Saturn will be in another sign by the time Ketu and Jupiter conjoin. Why is that important? Well, essentially, it doesn't create that kind of like a mass destructive combination you normally have when those planets meet. You're also not going to have, although you will have a cluster of planets around December 26th, around the time of an eclipse. I think the most you'll see because of the nature of the planet and because Jupiter is a controlling planet, is essentially a minor economic shock. So I think a lot of people are getting wound up for no real reason. So if I'm looking at next month, what I can say is after November 8th, Jupiter moves into Sagittarius and moves out of Scorpio. We actually have a blessed period for about 2 to 3 weeks where Venus and Jupiter are in the same sign in Scorpio, and that's actually good for money, good for financial prosperity, and it's good for gains. Mercury and Venus are extremely well placed right now, and over the next few weeks, up until around November 15th, the only thing that will be at issue is governments almost universally will be distrusted around the world until around November 15th. And that's mainly because the sun's heading into its stabilization sign of Libra starting on October 15th, 16th. So whenever those transits happen, you'll see shifts, you'll see people, and you're seeing wars in different parts of the world, like Turkey just engaged in a war or just started in action. You're seeing other countries gearing up for it. And the Turkey issue is really complicated. It's not quite as simple as the media is making it out to be. So I'm not going to say much more about that. And it involves Syria and Russia and a bunch of other countries. So essentially, so I'm not defending the attack. I'm just saying it's complicated. The other thing is, you have a lot of action. I'm looking at a November 15 chart. A lot of action around. You'll excuse my. I hope you can't see my bald head, but maybe you can. Well, that's too bad. Also, by the way, I just noticed there were riots in Ecuador, and that was something I predicted on an earlier broadcast. So that's something or I was predicting trouble in Ecuador. So in mid-November, the damage spots seem to be South America up through Chile, into Bolivia, through western Brazil, and over all the way down to essentially Syria. Turkey, interestingly enough, has some problems right around Ankara. So that's where the government of Turkey is located. So that should be interesting for them. So that indicates some trouble in the government of Turkey, or some disruption in the government of Turkey. The other part that looks interesting to me is that China and Hong Kong are still along trouble lines, as is Indonesia. Those seem to be the parts of the world which are, and there's a Saturn-Mars line running all through Europe, all through Africa again, and we know what recently happened in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia attacked some Iranian ships, I believe. They sent some missiles at it, and so it looks like that part of the world will be, sort of in trouble as well. The other dangerous lines are Mars lines. That's in Western Canada, pretty much between the southwest Canada and the edge of, around a third of the way up towards the edge of Alaska. And the last line I can see is right around Rio de Janeiro and Brazil. So Brazil's getting hit twice. It's getting hit by Saturn and by Mars. Are there any other jeopardy lines? Now, this doesn't mean these are the only places in the world trouble is going to happen, but these are the most likely places in the world for trouble to hit. Also, there's a Rahu line. I just noticed it. South Africa through Germany. So I think, again, you're going to see more or less a lot of the same centers of the world. France is going to be let off the hook. This is from around November 15th to December 15th. I'm not going to go to the end of the year yet, just because I want to save that for a later broadcast, but those are the basic problem areas. If we're looking at astrological signs, if I can just go back to my computer right now and flip this off. All right, so essentially around the middle of the month, there's not really an eclipse in November, but there is a Moon-Rahu conjunction right around the middle of the month. Now, these things happen with relative frequency. These aren't really all that extraordinary, but that usually creates a great deal of anxiety for people, and especially people, but it also gives a certain amount of fame to people who are Geminis or Gemini risings in the Vedic system. And remember, every sign, so when I'm saying Gemini, I'm talking about June 15th through July 15th. So let's go through them systematically, sign by sign. Aries has a lot of ambition, but it's changeable. This time of year, this is April 15th through May 15th. And it should give some publicity, some good publicity to the sign. Also some good opportunities for expansion and international influence. It will have some relationship possibilities, but it's going to looks like it's going to be more, there'll be some passion, but it doesn't have a lot of longevity connected with it, unfortunately. But that's what it appears to be. Between May 15th, so that's Aries. Between July 15th, between May 15th and June 15th, I'm so sorry. Between May 15th and June 15th, you have a lot of expenditures happening for Taurus, and a lot of some minor health issues like vitality issues happening for that sign around the same time, between November 15th and December 15th. And also that sign will also have relationship possibilities, but they'll be more long-lasting than Aries. For Gemini, that's between June 15th and May 15th. Some popularity, some fame, some great reputation, great opportunities for expansion. Really not a good time for relationships, although Jupiter's entering that sign is going to actually bring in relationship opportunities for that sign, but after February it's more likely for that sign to form lasting relationships than right now. And it'll also be very good for that sign in terms of overall luck. The fifth house is pretty packed in this chart, and that gives a lot of intelligence, a lot of fortune in terms of expanding luck and improving luck. Cancer is between July 15th and August 15th. This sign has had quite a bit of trouble over the past few months. And it's not really, it just indicates a lot of domestic unrest, maybe temptation to get involved in external things to get your enjoyment. Doesn't necessarily mean love affairs. I mean, a lot of people always jump to that conclusion, but you'll try to also enhance your pleasure by going to movies or by getting involved in public events, things like that. Because home life will be rather difficult, to be honest. And some health problems as well. It seems like a lot of strain in this sign, relationship problems. Leo is in a little bit better shape. That's between August 15th and September 15th. And that has more ambition, more happiness at home, some problems with children, some difficulty with getting along with people. Not really bad, but it seems like luck will be spoiled a little bit, so the person will have to work twice as hard to get the same amount of luck they would normally would. For Virgo, Virgo right now is kind of under attack. Basically, Saturn's aspecting Virgo, and it will until until late January of 2019. But Mars, thankfully, will have moved out of the sign by that time. It'll be in Libra, and essentially that will give more financial growth to the sign, more ambition to the sign. Home life will still be a little bit weird, just because it'll seem like the person will it'll feel impossible for the person to please everybody at home. It'll just be a really difficult time for them overall, emotionally. And Moon and Rahu are in the 10th house, so career-wise, it should be good for a short-term boost in career. It'll be up to that sign to maintain it after the end of this year, but there will be a short-term boost for the sign occupationally. But, Libra, which is October 15th to November 15th, the period we're in right now, the sun is still in Libra as of November 15th. It's about to transition into Scorpio on November 16th. And that sign should actually show real confidence, real financial growth. To a certain extent, they'll be reliving or redoing certain things from their past because Mercury is retrograde in the sign. But overall, it looks like a relatively benevolent month, and a lot of their more ambitious projects will actually come to bear or come to fruition this month. But again, like I said, this sign will, as is true with Virgo, this sign will have to work to keep that luck going. It's not it'll fluctuate a great deal over the next month or so. Saturn and Jupiter are in, Scorpio is November 15th to December 15th. Venus is in the first house, which is terrific. In Vedic charts, Venus in a sign connected with Mars, or Mars in a sign connected with Libra, indicates a highly passionate person, or any interaction of Mars and Venus. A lot of the Indian texts, or a lot of current Indian astrologers, tend to equate that with sex. And passion and sex are really two different things. Passion means you feel very strongly about something. Sex is really an act or emotion connected with the desire to procreate or lust. So passion is a positive thing, so this sign can turn passion. So the passion can go either way. It can be towards projects, it can be towards money, because Venus is in a money sign. Venus is one of the planets connected with relationships for Scorpio, and Mars is in the 12th house, so it's sort of connected with bed pleasures, but it also could mean travel to foreign countries, being passionate about spiritual life. There are a variety of ways to interpret this. For most people who are interested in spiritual life, or even interested in maintaining their life on this planet, I would tend to say it goes more towards passion, in the sense of the person being passionately interested in what they're involved in. The placement of Sagittarius, so overall it'll be a good month for Scorpio, but there will be some confidence problems, there will be some career problems, some lack of being noticed at work, which usually doesn't bother Scorpio, but this month it will. The sign Sagittarius, which is really going to be very busy over the next few months, has Jupiter in Mula Nakshatra, which is a very difficult nakshatra. It produces a great deal of wealth, but it's also connected with the goddess of destruction, Niriti. So Indian astrology uses these terms as, they're not really metaphorical. I mean, when they say destruction, they literally mean destruction. But Jupiter in that sign can mean destruction of enemies. It can mean changing of home life. It can mean getting rid of things you don't need. Jupiter in Mula Nakshatra can also indicate getting rid of barriers to wealth, or starting to get rid of barriers to wealth. And also it can mean changing life philosophy, so the person decides to go off in a different direction. Now, this is only going to be true for those signs which are heavily Jupiter influenced. So let's say, or Jupiter is really strong in the chart. So let's say if you're a Sagittarius or a Pisces or a Cancer or a Leo, those signs will be dramatically, or a Scorpio, those signs will be dramatically affected. The other signs less so. But it will give a good opportunity for income, especially for Aquarius, which we'll get to in a second, and also to a lesser extent for Scorpio. The Saturn and Ketu in that sign, again, it still has some trouble. It still has some trouble figuring out what it wants to do, but it'll be markedly more optimistic and less, and feeling less hope, and feeling more hopeful than it has over the past 2 years. This has been a really tough couple of years for Sagittarius and Gemini, and it's mainly because of Saturn being in that sign. Capricorn. Capricorn has no planets in it, but the Lord of Capricorn is in the 12th house, so this means the sign will have more expenditures. It'll have more financial responsibilities to undertake. It'll be trying to resolve old bills and bring forth new desires and new projects. So it'll be a little tough for it to do that, but with will and with spirit, it'll succeed in doing so. Capricorn, like Cancer, has had kind of a rough time of it, but I think we're seeing a cluster of planets in the 10th and the 11th houses. That's very good. They're good planets for this rising sign. So Venus in particular in the 11th house means money is going to come Capricorn's way this month, finally. It may not last long, but you'll actually see some. Aquarius. Aquarius has planets in the 11th house. 11th house is a house of goals, ambitions. Now, Ketu being in that house can either amplify the goals or the ambitions, and Aquarius is between, so Capricorn was between December 15th and January 15th and February 15th. Aquarius is February 15th through March 15th. So Aquarius is going to have a lot of luck. It'll have goals that it can follow and put through, but it'll require a lot of work, mainly because Saturn is aspecting the sign. But with Jupiter in that sign, a lot of the goals will come true and will be realizable. Lastly, Pisces has no planets in it. It does have a lot of planets in the house of career. It does have emotional turmoil in the 4th house. So home life won't be easy, and career life will be tough, but ultimately fruitful. And there will be gains of luck in career life as well over the next month. So that's what we have for this broadcast. It's October 15th. That's the date of taping that I have for this particular broadcast. Again,